Welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. We're back again today with someone from the community. We have Stephen Dotson on. Stephen wants to help make Brattleboro more livable for longer for everyone. Stephen works for the Town of Brattleboro in the planning department as our very first sustainability coordinator, and he's going to tell us what that is all about. He collaborates with all the town departments and with many, many organizations, businesses, and individuals in town. He has a background as a community organizer, an educator, and a nonprofit professional. So here we are with Stephen. Hi.
Hi, great to be with you.
Nice to have you on the show, Stephen. Stephen's office, when he's in his office, is right here in the municipal building, so we are down the hall from each other when I'm at BCTV. So it's nice to see you.
Good to see you, neighbor.
Yes, and Stephen has many different layers and facets to the things that he's done and the things that he's been involved with. You come from a military family, which means you moved around a lot for one thing.
That's right, yeah. My family's many things, but military is definitely one.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in Texas, but we moved to Taunton, Mass, and I lived there for a little bit. Then DC and Northern Virginia, and then college in the South and elsewhere after that. So.
Yeah, and you described having a diverse dinner table, which I thought was a great description.
Oh, for sure, yeah. A lot of different opinions about how the world should work and what right and wrong are about, and I think that put me in a position to try and work across diversity and understand how to talk with people who I don't agree with, but have to live with in the same house.
Yes, yes. At some point, you got introduced to Quakers.
Yeah, my mother actually introduced me to the Quakers, and she found out through her sister having gone to Swarthmore College, and they had a service there that my mother really was kind of moved by. And then later, when she had kids that were asking a lot of curious questions about what the God thing is and why don't we go to church, she brought me around to a bunch of different communities to test things out, see what I liked, and the Quakers really fit the bill for me. At the time, I was 11 or 12 and getting to be in the rebellious phase, and in a military family, one of the best ways to rebel is to join a peace church like the Quakers, where you talk about your feelings a lot. So that really defined a lot of my young life, and it influenced where I went to school and what I studied and a lot of other pieces. And
so you started at 10 or 11. That's a young age to start. Did you go to actual meetings?
Yeah.
And hang out?
Yep. Goose Creek meeting in Lincoln, Virginia was my home meeting, as the Quakers call their churches meetings, and they had an amazing summer camp program in the DC area for Quakers, and I went to that. Shout out to Catoctin Quaker Camp if anybody's out there. There's actually a lot of connection to Vermont there too, because a lot of those same people went and worked in summer camps here. Farm and Wilderness is one that's really well known throughout the state and has a very strong Quaker influence. Yes,
and you continued with the Quakers. You actually ended up teaching and doing summer camps there as well when you got older.
That's right, yep. I did the whole stretch of working in schools in kind of a youth ministry model and a summer camp model. I worked with the local community college running courses for kids and seniors in nature and other things. So. And I substitute taught in the public schools for a time, just to round it out. So I've taught in a lot of different circumstances, and it's been really rewarding.
Yeah, so that's something that feels quite natural to you.
Absolutely.
To be with kids for one thing, but also to be outside. Yeah.
That one of the first jobs I got here was actually with SIT World Learning, and I was working with the Iraqi Youth Leadership Education Program. So I got to meet some of the most talented young people from Iraq that were coming here to learn about environment, and we would take them around to different places to learn about pollution and how to prevent environmental degradation. And so there's always crazy opportunities for teaching and learning, and I'm excited to see SIT now helping host and transition these new folks into our community from Afghanistan.
Yes, the Afghanistan community that's here now, the refugees. Are you involved with the Community Asylum Seekers Project here?
I am not involved directly. Some of the ways I try and plug in are just to volunteer, which I would encourage anybody to do. It's a great time and a great way to get involved and stay connected. During the pandemic even, there's things you can do. So yeah, that's the only way I've been involved.
Yeah. We're jumping ahead a little bit and getting in almost to your job description. So the Quakers, have very much to do with social justice, nonprofit organizations, outdoor education, as you've mentioned, alternative classrooms, and you'd refer to them as scholars of conflict.
Nonviolence is an art form of using conflict in a constructive way. And so sometimes you think about pacifists as saying no to war, but the real hardcore Quakers would say peace is harder work than stopping violence. It's not just no to violence, it's the presence of justice, the presence of equity, a healthy environment. So you've got to be creative to use conflict well, and I think that's what Quakers have been learning over the years.
Yeah, and so in your time with them, and through the different ages that you were, how did that develop in you?
I think the biggest influence from that time was the style of leadership that I saw. If you're going to mediate conflict and come to consensus, as Quakers like to, or they rather come to something close to consensus. Not everyone agrees every step of the way, but I agree enough to not stand in the way of consensus. If you're going to be leading a process that reaches that point, you need to not be the guy who says, I have the vision, I know the solution, who's on my side versus your side versus his side. And so my kind of model of leadership, which I brought to this role, is really about servant leadership. It's about trying to articulate the commonality of that voice that's emerging in the group and trying to identify the paths forward. So it's not about my vision, it's not about my voice or pretending that one guy has the answer for the problem we're solving.
So you're kind of reading what's going on continually when you're in the midst of this. And
That's a good way to describe it.
Trying to find a way, I would think you would always be trying to find a way forward, but not necessarily one where everybody is on the same page.
You're looking for a solution that everyone can agree on, but not everyone's going to be happy with, right? What can you tolerate? How can we all move forward together? Moving forward together means that whatever solution or result we end up with doesn't sow the seeds for the next conflict in its solving, right?
Right. You're trying to keep the whole together while acknowledging all the different parts.
Being able to hold space for all those voices and help articulate, well, where is the center of the Venn diagram where we all can move forward together, and what's preventing us from getting there?
In the course of that kind of process, and I'm sure you've been through this many, many times, what is that process like for you to be going there, to be there?
Well, it's long. You have to be very, very patient in order to commit to that kind of a result and process. For me, in some ways, it's interesting. If I'm playing that role of leader within that process, I'm very much just trying to listen, sit back and listen. And realize the dynamics in the room. Where's there balance in the voices that we're hearing? Who haven't we heard from? Why might we not be hearing from them? And then if I was a participant, I would be acting in an entirely different way. But I'm not concerned at all for my opinion in that process in a lot of ways. I can assert my opinion elsewhere in that role.
But you have the self-control to do that.
Oh, well, yeah, maybe sometimes. You haven't seen me on a bad day, Wendy. I can lay down the law, too.
It's impressive, though, because you are holding different roles, as you're going into these.
It's tough. We all have that role strain sometimes, right? When to lead, when to follow, how to follow well, how to lead well.
You go on to Guilford College, you study philosophy and social anthropology, which go along with everything you're doing. And you went to Antioch.
I did, yeah, for a little bit.
And was that for Buddhist Studies? That's
right. The Antioch College has one of the oldest, I think the oldest Buddhist Studies program, where you go to India, you stay in a monastery, you learn the 3 different branches of Buddhism. And this guy, Robert Pryor, he just started going there back in the 60s when the hippies were getting really interested in faith and spiritual community. He went there with Ram Dass and all those guys, Timothy Leary, and he never left. He found this one Buddhist community and then set up this ongoing study abroad program through Antioch College there, Robert Pryor. So that changed my life for sure. I still stay in touch with a lot of my Bodhi friends, as we call ourselves. I learned a lot of things that I brought back, a lot of which were that Buddhism isn't what you see in the bookstore. Buddhism looks so many different ways, just like we see Christianity in America like so many different ways. And so that was really eye-opening for me.
And probably not real far from Quaker, right?
I was used to sitting in silence. You know, the meditation piece was pretty familiar in some ways, but the techniques they do are different. And, you know, meditation's more about emptying. The Quaker thing is a little different. You know, everyone's charged with being the preacher. So you're kind of listening like,
oh, interesting.
Am I supposed to bring a message today and stand up out of the silence and say something?
Oh, I see.
That's the whole idea.
So it's the expression, self-expression as well as the contemplative part of it. You did a lot of traveling. I know that you went to Kenya, India, also Haiti. Any highlights from those travels?
That trip to Haiti was actually special because I got to go with my mom. My mother's a midwife, and she's done amazing work internationally to try and train women to be skilled birth attendants in places that have really low maternal or high maternal mortality rates. So babies and moms are dying in birth, and we can train women to fix that. So I got to go with her to Haiti, to Hinch, which is in the Central Plateau area of Haiti, very remote, and film some promotional documentary work for her. But the amazing part for me was to meet the people of Haiti there and to see pieces of the world that I never would have experienced.
Yeah. Stephen, you mentioned doing a documentary in Haiti. I know that you've done a couple others. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Sure. Video work, I should say. I've been a part of a couple documentary projects, but I haven't done them myself.
Yeah.
I did videography a lot for social justice causes and campaigns. I did some music videos and all sorts of funny spots, just freelance. But that was kind of how I transitioned out of the Quaker thing and into more of a nonprofit communications professional role. I got involved in all these justice organizations with the Quakers, and then they needed help with their website and their videography and all of that. And so after a few years of doing that, I was doing journalism for a really interesting outfit called wagingnonviolence.org. Check it out. We covered the world and nonviolent protest and how people were using the tools of nonviolence to try and create social change, equity, a better environment. And our editor, Nathan Schneider at the time, was based in New York and happened to go to this rinky-dink organizing meeting in Prospect Park where these guys said, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we occupied Wall Street? And of course that unexpectedly blew up and turned into what we now know of it to be. But because of that, Nathan was the only reporter that was trusted by those organizers during that whole time. And so he ended up writing for the New York Times and the Atlantic and was a narrator in a media piece that I helped put together called 99%, the Occupy Wall Street collaborative film.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been very exciting.
Oh, it was tremendously, that time was tremendously exciting. And I think there's still a lot of ripples on from that moment that we're feeling today.
Very much so. You come to Brattleboro. You have a good Brattleboro origin story, I think. It kind of ties a lot of things together.
For sure, for sure. Well, I had been coming up to the area because the woman I was dating at the time, her parents lived here in West Dover, so we were starting to get to know the area. And then a friend was getting married here and asked me to brew beer, and I had just been home brewing and such. So I got my friend Chris Gagne, who I got brewing beer to help me with it, because I wasn't as good as Chris is, never will be, he's amazing. So Chris and I actually brewed some beer for a wedding in Dummerston, and then about a year later, he was trying to start a brewery in Philadelphia, and eventually that just didn't pan out, and so we looked north to Brattleboro and Vermont, and our first day coming and just exploring the town and seeing what was there, I remember Kate O'Connor jumping up from her desk at the Chamber of Commerce and saying, "A brewery? A brewery? Yeah, come on, we'll introduce you to everybody." So that was part of it.
And that became Hermit Thrush Brewery.
And that's Chris and Avery's brewery. Who did all the hard work, just to
Chris
say.
was on the show a couple years ago and talked about that. I don't remember that story. But that's pretty fabulous.
Yep, Chris and I had worked together at a Quaker retreat center where he was a chef and I was doing the leadership development program, and we would play Settlers of Catan to kill time between our work shifts.
And you're not really involved any longer, but you have free beer for life, is that right?
You know, ask Chris, but he's never held back for me. He used to take all our money at these poker games and have free beer. So the beer's free as long as you let Chris win the poker game.
Well, that's a deal.
Let Chris win. He's an excellent poker player. Stay away.
You've been 6 years here in Brattleboro, is that correct?
I think coming up on 8.
Oh, coming up on 8.
Yeah.
So you've been involved with the Sterling of the Heifers and the Slow Living, Brattleboro Savings and Loan you worked with, Rich Earth Institute, the Retreat Farm, SIT Youth Program Leader. You've done so many different things in town. How did your new job come about? Sustainability Coordinator.
Well, I wasn't a part of my role coming into being, but I had a sense that this town was going to care about sustainability. I wanted to be involved in all these different groups because they were really innovative and doing things I didn't see being done elsewhere. No one's doing anywhere in North America what Rich Earth Institute is doing, right? Those guys are pioneers.
The Rich Earth, okay.
Yes, the P-cyclers, if you know about them, on Old Ferry Road.
Yes, there's a call for needing a sustainability coordinator through the town. How did you two coincide there?
Well, the town went through quite a process to decide this. It's a great example of the radical acts of democracy that happen at town meeting.
Yes.
There was a question about why a certain line item around energy efficiency hadn't been spent for a few years. And the answer was, well, we didn't have anyone who's in charge of spending it. The town had once had an energy coordinator who did an amazing job, and that's Paul Cameron. And so he had last done that for the town. So when the question was asked, why hasn't this money been spent? And the answer was, well, we don't have someone to spend it. The next question was, how much does it cost to get somebody to spend this money for us? And that's kind of where it started. Someone voted in enough funding to have a position that would be focused on sustainability. And then across the next 8 months or so, they honed a job description. And I think I interviewed for this near the beginning of December 2019 and started February 2020.
And as we all know, what happened after that?
Oh,
so.
Valentine's Day, Wendy.
Yes.
It was Valentine's Day 2020. What a great, yeah. The pandemic has defined a lot of how my role has shaped up these first few years. Pandemic is not sustainable. How do you know what to do when nothing is very sustainable right now? You know, there's a couple key stakeholders within the town that I'm guided by. The first is my colleagues and coworkers in the town, in the departments. What are the priorities for keeping our facilities green? How can we make our vehicles clean? How can we keep our waste down? All that. And then there's the committees, the citizen participants within the town structure. So I staff the energy committee, and they very much give me some direct guidance as to what directions we need to take things in for the community. The ag advisory committee, so food and farms and how to sustain that, since it's such a big part of our community, our economy. And I participate with the Conservation Commission, the Hazard Mitigation Committee. There's a lot of angles on it. The way I like to describe it to a lot of people is there's Big T Town, which is kind of the official town of Brattleboro, the buildings the town owns, the municipality as an organization. And then there's the bigger small T Town, which is the people, the nonprofits, the geographic footprint of all of Brattleboro. If I'm working on Big T Town energy, I'm working on the municipal center's electricity.
Right.
But if I'm working on Little T Town's energy, we're helping you guys swap out your light bulbs and have heat pumps and become more efficient, find insulation options in your homes. So those are two very different groups to work with.
Yes.
And a lot of times I'm trying to just activate and empower people who I see rise up from the community to be able to live out what they're trying to do in their sustainability efforts. So I'm an enabler of the best kind.
Yes, it's good to have a nice definition for enabling. Again, you're talking to so many different people, getting so much information for the town and how to implement these different things. Pandemic comes along so quickly, so quickly after you start the job. It seems like what you've been doing and the pandemic are going hand in hand in a certain way. Can you talk about that? Talk about what you've been focusing on mainly or mostly in the last couple of years, the different alliances. I know you've done a lot with developing the trails, for instance, between Winston Prouty and the Delta campus, which is very exciting. The Sewing Brigade for the masks, which was a wonderful down-home, let's do it together initiative, mutual aid, et cetera. So yeah, if you could just talk a little bit about what these last 2 years have been like for you and how they're shaping your job as well as yourself.
Yes, the pandemic has defined a lot of what this job has turned out to be, and in ways I didn't expect. But I think it comes back to what you started with in describing me at the very beginning, that I've chosen to try and define this position as preserving the quality of life for everyone for as long as possible in this town. And climate isn't the only threat to our well-being, and pandemic has shown us that. So there's certain areas, certain strengths of Brattleboro, certain weaknesses of Brattleboro that we can address that serve to address pandemic, but also climate change.
Yeah, right.
And you're pointing at one of them that I think is really important, the trails and being able to get outside and stay active and stay mentally well and healthy. Bringing that into focus helps solve pandemic issues, which also helps us move away from cars as our primary transportation.
Yeah.
Food insecurity and the importance of our food system is also one of those areas where the more time you spend solving food, the more time you solve ensuring against pandemic and providing resilience to the community.
Yeah.
Food waste may be one of those things that we try and focus on in coming years. I'll share one statistic. I recently read that a quarter of all the water that we pull up out of the ground in all of the United States is used to make food that is wasted.
Huh.
Grows produce that is thrown away. So that's a quarter of our groundwater. And then all the transportation and the labor that went into it, and that's not easy labor. So much can be done when you focus on certain intersections of different issues.
Yes, yes, and also bringing it all back home. For one thing, the localness of everything that you're dealing with, the edible Brattleboro, everyone eats, there's so many different programs that were either just beginning or have been created during the pandemic, and it seems like almost every one of them touches on your job.
Well, the way I'd put it is I have the pleasure and privilege of getting to support people who are doing amazing things, you know, and all the projects you've listed, I want to point out, I have not been the lead, right?
Right.
Stephanie Bonin gets all the credit for Everyone Eats, the Sewing Brigade. There's so many names of people that should be having this conversation with you in a certain sense. I get to be that enabler and bring resources, bring new partners in, and that's fulfilling for me. So.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you can also look at yourself as an umbrella, right? There are so many people that you are talking to and I would imagine planning with, like how can we do this better? How can we make it more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. There's also the great example of the VBikes. If you could talk about that a little.
Sure, yeah. So last year we worked with Dave Cohen, who's a well-known commodity in the Brattleboro area and a champion for biking in Vermont and nationwide. And Brooks Memorial Library and Local Motion is a statewide organization that advances biking. And they helped us set up an e-bike lending library at Brooks Memorial.
Yeah.
I need to give a shout out to Kevin O'Brien, who was the AmeriCorps service member that led that effort with me and with Brooks. Kevin was the reason that happened and was maintained for a pilot year and proved that it could work. And now we're going to move on with it. It'll stay here. So that is one example. You're giving people a taste of a bike that could change the way they commute. It could give them a sense of mobility if they're aging or feel like they don't have as much accessibility as other people may have. And it's free. Everyone, I think as soon as we opened it up within a week, every reservation was booked.
That's wonderful.
Wasn't that amazing?
Yeah. You also have something else going on with the library too these days.
The librarians are my favorite partners in crime, and I've told them that. Yes, so in the middle of trying to address food insecurity and work to understand where the weakness is in our food system, because they've become so much more evident, one of the ideas was, how can we help people grow more food for themselves? Not that they're going to grow all their own food, but the sense of accomplishment, the sense of self-reliance in one piece, the health, the wellness, getting out there and being able to relate to other people, that meant a lot to people. So we decided we would try and start this tool library that was focused on food and growing food. So we're setting up what we're calling the Field to Plate Community Equipment Collection, which has been funded by a generous grant from the Vermont Food Bank. and it will have the tools you need to grow and cultivate food,
Yeah.
but then it'll have the kitchen equipment that you need to process it, to preserve it, to capture it so it doesn't go to waste, right? Like we were talking before.
Yeah.
So Edible Brattleboro and others have helped inform that project. You know, Marilyn was telling me what tools need to be in the shed and pricing out stuff for me. And eventually that tool library will include more than just food farmy tools.
Yeah.
It will expand to things to improve your house for energy efficiency, or
That's so
who
great.
knows, whatever the
Yeah.
community needs.
It's wonderful. You know, one thing as you're talking, it's almost like creating a community backwards in some ways, in our day and age. I mean, these are things, you know, that wouldn't necessarily have been necessary when
Yeah.
Brattleboro was established. But now we're coming back to, okay, what does the pandemic, you know, opened up the doors very wide for that. What do we really need? How can we sustain ourselves? How are we going to eat? So it's very exciting.
I'm glad you have that take on it. I like that take. A lot of people don't like the fact that our lifestyles will have to change because of all these challenges,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We can't expect everyone in India to live an American lifestyle and we still solve climate change. So relocalizing and realizing where you want to be and how can I be invested here?
Right.
How can I be of service here? Those are really, really powerful questions, I think.
Yeah, and they're big steps, you know. I mean, they're big steps because they're influencing people's daily lives. And I think that's one thing that we're all seeing. You also have some great kids involved, teens and younger people.
Yes, I really love the opportunity that I have to get to engage youth in the community. I think some of the more recent events, I've gotten to speak at panels on climate justice, PUHS. I'll be working with some classes at Academy School where they are developing a biking program. They're actually repairing bikes for the kids, and
cool.
I'll help them learn how to fundraise and do grant writing and come up with strategies to support that with them. So there's all sorts of things. I do work with some of the high school students who engage with the committee structure. So we have an awesome member of the Energy Committee, Django Grace, who's also a high school student.
Yeah.
And I've been working with him to count his Energy Committee work as an independent study in class. So that's been really rewarding too.
Yes, yeah. So everything kind of goes into everything else.
You try and connect people. I'm trying to be a weaver for the good.
Yeah. Connecting people and their needs, and also what furthers the community. What do you do for fun? What's your recreation?
Boy, fun in the pandemic has been a challenge, right? I joke with my friends, I drive a Subaru, surprise, surprise, but I started calling it the adventure wagon because I keep outdoor recreational stuff in the back and it's just filled. So there's a bow and arrows if I want to go target shooting, there's a sled, there's ice skates, there's anything that could give me just a little bit of that initiative to get outside and stay active and happy and healthy.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
How to fill the back of your car. Yeah.
With implements of entertainment. And, recreation.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Stephen, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
This is fun. It's great to hear what you're doing. It's really exciting.
I'm glad to be here, and there's no place I'd rather be doing this work, so I feel very fortunate.
Brattleboro VT, right?
That's right.
Yes. Thanks. And thanks to you all out there for being with us today to hear about new exciting things that are happening in Brattleboro, for the people, by the people. And thanks to Stephen Dotson for being with us today and telling us about exciting new things that are happening. Keep your eyes and ears open because these things are going to be available for you, for everybody in the community. Check out the library, check out all of the different sites. Brattleboro has, I think, about 12 different sites on social media and is continually reporting on what's going on and who's around. So stay tuned, stay with us. We'll be back next week. Thanks for tuning in.